Okay. This is grinding 10 pounds of chicken leg quarters. This is what we do. Start with the meat with the dogs. Turn it on. And this is bones and all. This is just like hamburgers. Feel the bones. Okay, there is a dozen jumbo eggs. This is goat's milk, and this is the eggs in the mixer. We're gonna add a little bit of goat's milk to that. I would say about 1/4 of a cup, and then we're gonna mix it. And while we're doing that, we're gonna come here. I'm showing the different livers. This is chicken liver. I don't add water to the chicken liver because it's got enough liquid in itself. And usually it cooks without needing added liquid. This is the beef liver. It does need liquid. There's not enough liquid in it. So this is a cup of water that I add, which is probably a little bit too much. I'd probably say 1/2. But you can still add that to the doggy stew. So, and this will be when the eggs are ready. Or let me look at the eggs. Is the eggs ready? Yes. So the eggs are ready. And we're gonna put eggs in coconut oil. And we're going to scramble them. And I'm gonna make a mess. So we're going to cook all of this at the same time. Keep in mind that I usually will cook the liver and the eggs beforehand. These are usually cooked and frozen. I defrost them when I'm making the doggy stew. The only thing that I cook while I'm cooking the doggy stew is rice, which we'll get to that. Okay, this is the beef liver. It's a little bit more difficult to do, as you can see how big it is compared to the chicken livers. They're not in big pieces like that. If you remember right, the juices and stuff, I said I add a little bit too much water. This is where it doesn't matter, because you're going to put all of that in the blender if I don't make a huge mess. So, now, even with the chicken liver, you cannot blend this dry. You have to have a little bit of liquid in here or it will not blend very well. So we want a good amount of liquid in here. And that's probably not even enough. So as you can see, there's barely any liquid in there. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more to it, and you'll know as you go whether it's, you know, you just want it kind of liquidy, which I'll show that when we're done. Keep in mind I usually do this in big bulk, so I usually don't do just a little bit like that. So it's kind of, I do everything by knowing how to cook. So to give you measurements can be difficult sometimes. So as you can see, that was too liquidy. I usually have the whole thing full of liver, so, but it doesn't matter. This is all gonna go in the doggy stew. Usually it's a lot thicker than that, and actually I'll show you that in a minute. So this is really liquidy. I'll show you that in the chicken. This is gonna go in the doggy stew that we do a video of later. Now I'm gonna go back to the chicken. This is already ground chicken. We're gonna boil it. Once it's boiled, we're going to drain out all the water and just use the meat. This is just the chicken, and yes, I get my hands in there to smash it up. It'll cook better. Cooks really nice. I'm going to estimate about 30 minutes boiling. But again, like I said, you just kind of have to look at it and see when it's cooked. So we cook it on low. Now we're going to go to the rice. This is 5 cups of rice. This is 10 cups of water. One thing, if you don't know how to cook rice, when you start cooking it, do not stir rice when you're cooking it. As you can see, this has a little thing here that lets steam out. We time it for 20 minutes. Now, once in a while, give or take 5 minutes, you have to let it cook a little bit longer. I'm gonna go back to this video when it's usually about 5 minutes till it's done. It starts boiling over, which I'll take the lid off, release the pressure, put it back on, but I do not stir the rice at all. Okay, this is the chicken liver. I'm gonna do the liver just so you can see how it's supposed to be. Again, I usually have this completely full of liver, so I have to kind of play with the water and see what I'm dealing with. As you can see, all the water out of the chicken liver cooked down too, so we're gonna add a little bit of water to that as well. We're gonna add a little bit less water. Probably where you can't really see it. We just want to blend it with water because it won't blend correctly if you don't add liquid to it. As you can see, you're not really leaving it in there very long. And that looks a lot better. Yeah, a lot better. So as you can see, it comes out. It's just a paste. And so that's about the end. This is getting where I talked about where it starts boiling over, you can see. So all I do was just lift the lid up. The bubbles go down. Now you can see that there's 19 seconds left. That's still a little bit too much water, so we're going to cook it down a little bit more, estimating probably about 5 more minutes. Basically, you can have a little bit of water on top, but not that much. Now, one thing I didn't mention is I do stir this while it's cooking. Let me end that timer. This I do keep stirred. I don't stir the rice while it's cooking. But the meat, you can pretty much, I stir it until it's all done. And you can see it's almost completely done. A little bit more cooking to be done. Now, it's kind of weird. I hate getting rid of this liquid because it's good liquid from the chicken. But I found that if I don't strain the meat and I use that liquid in the doggy stew, for some reason the dogs don't like it as much as just using the meat, and I drain the liquid out of it. I have done this for 2 years now, and I constantly do different things to see what the dogs will eat and what the dogs won't eat. And this is one of the things I noticed. Something else we'll get to later, this is the eggs. These are things, this is the beef gelatin that I use. This is good for collagen, big on joints and everything else. I really like giving the dogs a tablespoon of this in the food. And you can see that it's just kind of powdered stuff. This is my eggs that I actually baked. You can see that. You bake it in the oven on 350 for about an hour. And then after it cools, you put it in the blender. And then it'll blend it down to a really powdery consistency like that. This is something I'm big on, kelp. I love the kelp for the dogs. In my opinion, kelp, pumpkin, and sweet potatoes is kind of a superfood for the dogs, especially on the intestines. Kelp is also good for allergies. Ginger and turmeric I don't really put in the food anymore. Just because there's some dogs that don't really care for the spice, it is good for the dog. Some dogs will eat it, some won't. But when I make enough for 22 dogs, then I tend to just try to do it where everybody will like it. So going back to the rice, you can kind of see that now it's still boiling a little bit, but you can see barely any water at all on top. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the heat off, and I usually will let it sit there for about 5 minutes. Now you can see that we're done with the meat as well. So give or take 25 minutes is what it took to cook the meat. Now, one thing, I love this. I bought it from the 99-cent store. It's one of the best things that I like to do, using in the meat, and you can see it drains the meat. And then we just separate the meat. So I will separate all of that, and then we're going to add it into the liver, and we will finish the video. The cooked meat, this is already drained. And you already saw that I had already added the liver that was in there because it had a little bit too much liquid in it. We're going to add the rice, which I'm actually going to bring that to the stove. So everything else, keep in mind the meat, the liver, the eggs is usually frozen. I usually defrost it while I go. The rice is the only thing I cook when I'm making the doggy stew. We make about 6 of these every week. And then I'll show you what we store them in. And yes, when I'm doing this, I make a huge mess in the kitchen. We're going to scoot back. Okay, the eggs are already scrambled. Now we're going to get to the seasoning that I talked about. I usually use a full tablespoon of the beef gelatin. This is the ground egg shells. I usually use a tablespoon. With this, I only use a half of a tablespoon. Just, again, this is things that I've tested on what the dogs like and what the dogs don't like. So, and then I just add that in there. And then we're going to get to the canned sweet potatoes, the large can. This is 40 ounces, liquid and all. I put in there. 2 cans of 14 ounces. Or I think the larger cans are 29 ounces. So 1 large can or 2 small cans. These are the peas. Again, it's all the liquid. The green beans. I do the French green beans, but you can do regular green beans. That's just my preference more than anything. The dogs are going to interrupt our video. This is the canned carrots. Again, all liquid. I'll get to the reason why you need a lot of liquid once we get to that point. Because it's hard to stir it. You need plenty of liquid in there. And then this is the canned pumpkin, large can. The yams had no sugar in it. It's also the large can as well. So now we get to the interesting part. Now we're going to add liquid. I usually add 1.5 pitchers of liquid. It helps when we stir it, and I'll show you when we stir it. So this is a pitcher I use. And then 1/2. And then this is the little device my husband made for me. It is a drill with this is actually to stir paint with. My husband is a painter by trade. And so this is where we're gonna mix it up. And I blend it where you don't get to see chunks of carrots and you don't get to see chunks of sweet potatoes. The blades cut it up really nicely. So this is our canned basically it takes the place of canned food. One thing of doggy stew will make 4 of these, and what I do is I put them in the refrigerator. We make about 24 of them in a week, and that's what we go through. So any questions or anything, feel free to message me and I will answer them.